You are listening to the WoW Stratics Podcast. The WoW Stratics Podcast, a bi-weekly podcast featuring interviews, news, reviews, and more from the World of Warcraft community. Be sure to check out wowstratics.com.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the WoW Stratics Podcast, the official World of Warcraft podcast of the Stratics Group, bringing you the latest and greatest in news, opinions, and interviews every episode. My name's Mioni, but one of your hosts today, and resident timekeeper to make sure this show actually has an ending. And I'm joined by my fellow team members and hosts. Today we have Sylar, the managing editor of WoW Stratics and CEO of the Ace Games TV YouTube network. Metro, a 25-man heroic raid leader and writer for WoW Stratics, and Samkos, also a writer for WoW Stratics. Today's topic is the change in raid composition in Warlords of Draenor, from what it currently is in Mists of Pandaria. If you're unfamiliar, currently both 10 and 25 heroic raiding teams battle it out for world firsts on somewhat equal footing. In Warlords of Draenor, they are making the hardest content, now rebranded Mythic, a 20-man only raid composition setup. Obviously, this is a topic we're pretty much all keen to discuss, and so to help me address this gargantuan task, to help us uncover all of the aspects of the information we have before us, we are proud to welcome our first ever guest to the podcast, Fizzy, who is an experienced 10-man heroic raider. Welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
So let's get started. Metro, if you'd like to explain exactly what it is that's going to change in Warlords of Draenor, and more importantly, how exactly is all of this going to unfold in your eyes?
All right. So at BlizzCon 2013, we learned that they are going to be consolidating the raids from the previous 25 and 10-man heroic split to one consolidated difficulty known as Mythic. That's going to be featuring 20 players only. On top of that, they're also going to allow the previous difficulties known as Flex and Normal, now called Normal and Heroic, to be completely cross-realm, completely flexible from 10 to 25. They've even said up to 30, maybe even 40 in the future, but so that is going to allow a lot of flexibility with guilds. But one way or the other, it's going to completely change. You know, obviously 10-man guilds and 25-man guilds are going to have to adjust. So that is going to be the first topic we discuss here today. First on the list is basically what changes 20-man brings to 10-man guilds. So what do you think, Sai?
I'm really looking forward to the 20-man raiding. It's gonna take away the whole drama between, oh, your guild sucked, you raid 25, man. Yeah, you killed that on the easy difficulty, because there's always a boss each tier that's easier on 10 or easier on 25, man, and there's always that stupid dispute. So I'm definitely looking forward to it being a flat, like, you killed that, you're killing it on the hardest difficulty. It's gonna be awesome.
Now, I'm actually interested in hearing what Fizzy has to say, as he's currently a 10-man raider, while me and Sai are 25.
I feel like 10-man raiders, like hardcore heroic raiders, aren't taken as seriously as 25-man heroic raiders because, you know, you have big guilds like Blood Legion, Paragon, all those people doing 25-man heroic. And I feel like people find it more impressive to kill things on 25-man than it is on 10-man. So I think that 20-man balance is going to make things a little more even across the board.
Okay, cool. And Mioni, you raided with us, 20-man, 25-man before. You've done 10-man raiding as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree that 20-man is obviously the whole aspect of bringing people together as opposed to being at each other's throats and obviously bragging. But there's a lot of other things that interest me about this, and more specifically how like loot's going to work in all this more specifically, which I'm sure we'll come to in a little bit. But I mean, like, how are they going to balance, you know, the things that were present in the 25-man raid setup for a 20-man setup, and keeping the 25-man people, regulars, basically, them happy at the same time as basically keeping the 10-man raiders who have now got to find effectively 15 other players for their guilds to be able to do 25, and then obviously 20-man for Mythic. How are they going to keep everybody happy? at all. It's going to change the way guilds are ran, and it's definitely going to bring up a few questions, I think.
All right, so let's talk directly now about what changes. First, we're going to talk about 20-man rating, how that's going to affect 10-man guilds. So since Fizzy, is in that position, how do you feel, because obviously there's still going to be the normal, like quote unquote normal progression where it's flexible. So you could still do it with 10 if you wanted to, but what do you think, how is that going to actually affect the guild you're in, or perhaps, any guild that you join?
Well, for the guild I'm in, I know that we're a 10-man guild, but we have probably 17 to 20 people that actually want to raid. I don't know why we haven't switched to 25-man. I feel like it's because not all of those people are on like the same skill level or gear level or whatever it might be. So we kind of have to bench people for bosses and kind of rotate people out every week. So I feel like for some guilds, at least in my guild, that mythic difficulty will be good because that way we don't have to, swap people in, or someone has to sit for, heroic Malkarok or something. Like everybody can just go in and everybody can, get their fair chance of loot without having to have the whole rotating thing going on.
Okay, great. And Sai, what about now? You're raiding with us, and you're also thinking about perhaps starting a new guild. What do you think has got to happen for guilds to be ready for this? Coming off a 10-man roster.
I mean, if you're starting off on 10-man, you definitely did start recruiting. I'd say like now, I'd look towards setting up 2 10-mans. I mean, if that's the route you want to go, and then you've got your 20 people, you take a little bit extra and work from there. If you don't start recruiting soon, I mean, we have got quite a long time. I don't think WOD's as soon as we would like, but you still need, if you want to raid the heroic progression, or mythic, I guess, you need to have your team ready to go before then, way before then, because, I don't know, in 10-mans, whenever I've been in a 10-man guild, it's felt like a very small core, if you ever join later on, it feels weird because you have to try and join this little clique. While a 25-man guild's more open, there's a lot more people, so everyone's more of a group, more of like a family feeling, rather than just like a clique feeling. So I feel they need to expand earlier as well to make people feel comfortable within the guild.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. Honestly, my own opinions are that, if it was up to me, if I was leading the 10-man guild right now, we wouldn't be doing 10-man anymore. Once that announcement was made, it's time to start 25-man because there's a lot of changes to be made to both leadership and roster. But we'll talk about that in a bit. Mioni, now, I know you have strong opinions on this. How do you feel about 10-man?
More specifically, I have a question for Fizzy, directly. I mean, you're talking about basically not having to bench people when you do go into the 20-man stuff, but also the skill level, like you say, is a lot more, let's say, varied in that situation. So these people aren't necessarily being recruited for that purpose. These are like your friends and people, who may be lesser skill level. How do you draw the line between what's progression for you in 20-man or, and whether or not you replace that person and recruit a healer who can actually heal, for example?
I feel like the line should be drawn if it comes to the point where, the other night we were actually wiping on heroic shamans for a while because one of our healers was actually kind of lacking, but she needed the experience. We ended up killing it, but we kind of thought about replacing her, or even, I don't know, adding another healer because she just really wasn't able to handle it. But that's more like a gear thing, I think. No, we're not all real life friends in this guild. A couple of us do know each other in real life, so we don't have to worry about that. But going back a couple months, I actually was in a 10-man guild where we all actually knew each other. And, progression did become a problem, and no one kind of wanted to be a jerk just because we were all friends in real life. So that kind of stopped us from progressing further just because nobody wants to be that guy that has to call out, their real life friend. And I mean, sometimes, it has to happen if you want to get that progression. But I feel like the line just has to be drawn, and 10-man's now and definitive, like, hey, you need to step it up, or you're just not going to be able to do this with us. I mean, it is what it is when it comes down to it.
And there's definitely going to be the gated content to be able to get into Mythic in the first place, right? So the the 25-man stuff and the flex is obviously going to allow people, for you to, without putting this too horribly, sort the weeds from, the prize turnips, get the people who are the prize players and see who isn't, sort of thing in that. So I guess that was something they thought about implementing, sort of free that up a little bit, but Metro, what do you think?
Well, before I, we're gonna move on to what's gonna happen with 25-man guilds. That's where I'm gonna have some topics. But anything you want to add, Samkos? Maybe any thoughts about even generally like coming from a smaller group to a larger group out of nowhere?
Well, in my knowledge, Paragon hasn't raided 25-man in Pandaria. Am I right?
Yeah, Paragon went. That's the guild.
Yeah, they went 10-man. Yeah. But soon as the Mythic was introduced, announced, they're immediately trying to get, because the reason was why they don't raid 25-man, because they are all Finnish guild, and they didn't get 25 proper players for the guild. So I'm wondering how are they going to get 20 people, 10 extra people, if they didn't get 25 people.
Yeah, I mean, I agree entirely. I feel like that was one of those, it was more of a cop-out than anything. They were trying to go 10-man for a very specific reason, and they gave that as an excuse. But I know people who would literally learn Finnish. They would learn Finnish to join that guild. So anyway, next up, next thing, we talked about the 10-man situation. Now we're going to talk about the 25-man situation. Now, obviously, if you haven't followed the first, you still have to do, normal was flex, so that's out. You don't have to ever do that. Heroic is now what it's being called, but that's the previous normal difficulty. That is still obviously going to be required, and they are going to, the first tier always works quite strangely. So they're going to gate, it's going to come out on a certain day, and then the next raid, etc. So there's going to be a distinct progression through normal. What this means for 25-mans, in my opinion, is that you are not really going to change anything. I literally, we're going to have an end of expansion meeting like we always do, see who's quitting, see who's changing, maybe see who wants to raid next year, but probably just going to rock with what we have, not going to like cut anybody directly. And then while we're doing those normals, that's going to be a while, especially only raiding 2 nights a week. We're not going to fly through it, but by the time we get to Mythic, I know that everybody will have a distinct, there'll be 20 to 22 people in your mind that like, these guys are the guys that need to be there for Mythic, and the other maybe 3, 4, 5 people that are still there, they'll be there for normal. Because once again, don't forget, you could still do, now it's called Heroic, you can still do both. They are 2 separate raids at this point. You cannot even switch in the same lockout. So, and then we'll see how it goes from there. So what, Sai, you're, in a similar situation. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that sounds exactly like what I expected to happen, to be honest. Yeah, pretty much.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's logical, because obviously there's that flexibility coming off normal. So, and then, Mione, what do you have to say about that?
I mean, obviously 25-man has always been something that I've tried to be in if I do raiding at all, simply because personally I feel that 10-man is maybe too, I'm not going to say too easy, don't worry, I'm not going to jump into that like man trap, but it's easier to manage, right? And I've always enjoyed the sort of chaotic sort of approach to setting up a 25-man guild. So I don't know, I think that people in the 25-man scene are definitely going to have the easier option here. That's obvious, but I still feel that it's going to shock everybody when 20-man does come around, and I think it'll be harder than a lot of people actually realize. I don't think it's actually going to change a whole deal, a great deal for a lot of guilds, because like if Sylar, for example, we're talking about Empathy, right, which is being set up for Warlords of Draenor raiding on the EU, which is going to be, by the way, the official EU place for people to come and join, on the Stratix side, fans or people who will read our stuff. So that's going to be cool. But, obviously, we're not going to get straight into that. I don't think anybody is really going to get straight into that. Only the hardcore guilds. I mean, obviously, it's all guesswork of whether or not, what it's going to be like. But personally, I think with the whole them going back to the BC ways of things, I think it's going to be pretty torturous, honestly. And I don't think people will really be affected as much as they think they are. I think 25-man people will be set in their ways. They'll have a 25-man team. You won't have to sit, CMO for that 20-man, for example. You'll need him for the 25-man that you're doing to actually get the gear you need.
Well, and with that, I'll say this because there's a lot of talk. Obviously, this is going to change the game. There's no doubt about this. Having one difficulty is the way I feel like it should have always stayed. There's some extenuating circumstances of why it did change, but either way, this is back to the way it's going to be. So when you see people in Mythic raid gear, you are now going to know that they are the top echelon. You know what I mean? So no matter what, you got to get there, and that's exactly what this is all about. You know, just getting there through the normals, the heroics, whatever it's called now. So that's pretty much the goal. Now, in terms of how guilds are going to approach it, obviously it's going to be a bit different. But since we got a 10-man current raider here, I did want to ask this question specifically. Do you guys have like a plan, maybe like a strategy, like when you're going to start building towards Mythic, or perhaps what's stopping you from building now, anything like that?
Currently, we actually sort of have almost enough people for Mythic. Like I said earlier, just the only problem we have right now is that we're actually on a really low pop server. We're on the underpog on US, which is like totally dead. But we are getting merged pretty soon. It's on like the to be merged list on the World of Warcraft site. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I feel like our biggest block from expanding and growing to that 20 number or 20 plus number, however many we're gonna end up with eventually, is just the fact that we have so few people on the server. And that being said, among those people, good players are probably even fewer. So I think that's going to be our really big issue when we're trying to build for that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually. The server we're on currently was previously unmerged, Fire Tree US, but it's now like the largest merged conglomerate. There's 6 realms combined. So that's no longer an issue. But I'll say this, the 10-man guilds on this server, they probably felt the same way. You know what I mean? When they saw this, luckily, I think we still had a few realms already merged by this point. But when they saw this, they probably had, they were probably a bit concerned because obviously, multiple 10-man guilds on one server where they can barely recruit as it is, they probably thought the only option was merging. So is that ever come through you guys' head? Maybe kind of merging with another guild, maybe a smaller guild, trying to like just consume them?
We might, because I know we've actually picked up a couple people recently from another 10-man heroic guild on our server, and there's even people on the Alliance who actually there's like one good Alliance guild, believe it or not, and we're even considering merging with them. Them coming to Horde, obviously, because Horde's way better, but. That's just one of the things that we could do. I mean, hopefully by the time World of Draenor comes out, we're merged, so that way we don't have to, go to that resort where we have to have, 10 people spend, what, $25 to or $30 to come raid on Heroic or Mythic difficulty even. So, like I said, hopefully that server merge really helps us out because, I mean, that's kind of a crappy last resort to resort to.
Yeah, I agree. I do like the virtual realms. So I think everybody would say that the virtual realms have been successful so far. All right, so the next topic that we want to talk to, so we talked about building the raid. Now let's talk about like building pugs and casuals and stuff like that, right? So we're talking about casual, flex, open raid. All of these topics surround the fact that you're now going to be able to do multiple lockouts of everything minus Mythic. So literally everything below Mythic. This includes normal difficulty currently, heroic difficulty in the future. So imagine being able to do, go find a pug for normal Siege of Orgrimmar. That's insane. That literally my brain has literally been splattered on the wall because there's a lot of things in normal that I do not find, compatible with pugs. So the fact that you're going to be able to do that, not only that, but you don't get locked to it. So I can do it 5 times a week if I want to. That's going to encourage a lot of strange behavior. What do you think about that, Sai?
Well, the first I kind of have concerns about it all, to be honest. So first up, if they do that, I feel there's going to be either a huge gap between like this difficulty level of normal and heroic compared to Mythic. It's just going to ramp up crazily because you can't tune it too difficult because you want people to just be able to like do it without voice comms, and because it's pluggable. So that kind of worries me. Another thing that sort of creeps into my head is the fact that you can have between 10 and sort of 30 people, and then Mythic's going to be 20. But they're trying to say that Mythic will be, more tuned because it is 20 people, but they still have to tune the previous ones for 10 to 30. So is Mythic really going to be that tuned for 20? If that makes sense, they're still having to make sure the previous difficulties work for 10 and 25. So I don't know. This might sound odd, but is the fight going to really change that much on 20 Mythic compared to normal and heroic that it's
Right. Yeah, I agree with
do,
that.
do you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I
it's,
do.
It's
Yeah.
kind of difficult to explain, but if they made it just a straight 20 across the board, normal, heroic, and mythic, then it would really be truly tuned for 20 people. But
It's
the
a good
other
point.
difficulties are still, not tuned.
Especially because if you recall, like we've had this talk before, Siege of Orgrimmar fights, they're really not that different from normal to heroic. It's just a massive damage increase. Like the strategy doesn't really change. But one thing they did bring up is that they're really trying to make it so like how old BC raids, they had a specific niche that you needed a priest or you needed somebody to do something. But because 10 man and 25 man, they couldn't really put those types of mechanics in. So Siler brings up a great point there. Do you want to elaborate on it, Mione?
I mean, obviously, yeah, mechanic elements of the fights are huge to scaling. And honestly, from what I believe would happen, what I could only see happening is them just seeing, like, putting blinkers on their heads and going, right, this is 20 man, this is our focus, let's make sure that this thing works. And actually make sure there's, like, 2 of these ads here, so everybody can learn that fight. Everything else, I don't think will be that well tuned, but as long as that main content is, I don't think it'll be too much of an issue. I know it sounds bad, but...
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. And this was another thing they talked about. They said they're going to be kind of like dynamically scaling. I guess they've already implemented this, haven't they? But dynamically scaling the mechanics. So, yeah, a good example is, some mechanics like on Panda Council where there's 6 debuffs go out at once in 25 man, but in Flex, it's, if there's only 10, there's this many go out, but if you get to 14, then a third goes out. So now they're going to try to balance that so it's not like cut off numbers. So obviously that, but both what Siler and Mione said, that's going to play a big role into it. But then you think about like fixed number mechanics like perhaps Shaw Pride, where there's 4 prisons and they need to be unlocked by a certain number of individuals. That can't really change unless you literally take the mechanic out of the encounter. So it's going to be interesting to watch. Okay. Yeah, so Fizzy, what do you think about the way like the scaling and Flex have translated to actual 10-man raiding? Because obviously in Flex, people try to bring like 14 seems to be the magic number to avoid some mechanics. Like, how do you feel like that's going to be translated now with 20-man on the horizon?
I feel like it's going to be weird because, I mean, you're going to have, between 10 and 25, and then it's going to scale up and down. So, like Mayoni said, you might have, like, 6 debuffs on 25 and only, like, 4 on, like, 15 or whatever. It's just going to be weird, and I think it's going to take some weird sort of balancing type thing, probably just a lot of trial and error on Blizzard's part to, like, get things tuned right. And like Mayoni said, I think having just like a set mechanic, so like if 2 people have to go do this one thing on 25 man or whatever, it should just be that like borderline type thing all through every difficulty. And I mean, as long as Mythic is like, I feel like 10 and 25 normal and heroic now are going to be sort of maybe not so hardcore serious, sort of type, like you have to have a guild to do these things. Like obviously they're going to be a challenge for pugs, like no doubt. But I feel like Mythic is going to be that really big thing that I hope Blizzard really focuses on tuning. I mean, not to sound, like the other 2 don't matter, but in the long run, it's going to matter more to like a certain part of the community that Mythic is tuned properly. And because, there's people who obviously don't care about normal and heroic now, or at least they won't in Warlords of Draenor. They're only going to care about Mythic and how Mythic works. But it's going to be really interesting because I feel like it's going to be hard to kind of make it so everybody gets like fair mechanics and everything's balanced for every single person, because obviously that's a very, very hard thing to do. I mean, I just hope it doesn't have the same sort of balance failures that PvP has gone through over the years and whatever. But hopefully they find a way to make it work, because I feel like it would be really good just for, your casual player to your hardcore player.
Yeah, now what you said there rings a bell, because it makes a lot of sense, right? We've all been through this where you learn the normal mode mechanics, but they don't translate to the heroic mode. So when you get to the heroic mode, nobody actually knows that they're wiped into the normal mode, right? Like this happens every single week, literally. But with this, now think about this, right? We're learning these mechanics on normal. We got maybe only 15 people in the raid. And then we go in there on Mythic, and it's like, fuck, well, now we need, like, we had a plan, but now we have to completely change, right? I mean, how big a deal is that? That's a huge deal, yeah.
Definitely,
So,
definitely.
yeah. Like, we had a plan for this amount of people, but now that it's a fixed 20, we have to completely reinvigorate the plan, so.
Yeah, it's like you have to completely go
yeah.
back to the drawing board and rethink your entire strategy, game plan, and all that.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I really had not considered that until right now. So it's pretty interesting. Samkos, now you've done like LFR and stuff like that. One thing we're going to transition into talking about here is like what this means for guilds, because they're really trying to push the whole just do it, just go with your friends. Don't worry about guilds. Like, how do you feel on it, like a casual level, that this type of change is good or bad?
Well, everything on the Mythic will suffer when Mythic comes. That's a given, because Blizzard is making sure that Mythic is gonna be the greatest thing ever. It's just a fact.
Right.
It always happens.
Yeah. So they're gonna put you think they're gonna put all their resources into it, and then the other ones will suffer because of that.
I'm not gonna say LFR gonna suffer, because LFR is LFR. It's nothing. It's a spag fest.
Right.
Nothing more.
Yeah, and I agree with that, because I have a feeling that what's going to happen here is we're going to see mostly groups just completely, like Fizzy said before, just they're not really even going to worry about it. Like guilds probably will do normal, but once you're in Mythic, it's just go do it. Just pug it whenever you want. And I'm not necessarily a big fan of that. If you remember back to BC, like previous tiers were very important for the current tier. And while that didn't seem like a great concept, because you had to constantly be doing old raids that you might not want to do or might not even have time to do, I also don't like the fact that people are going to now be like, we raid 2 nights a week. So I'm going to say to Siler, dude, you got to log on like Thursday and Friday and get that normal done, because you still need gear from there. But we're not going to be able to do it because we only got it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We only got 8 hours. You know what I mean? We only got 8 hours. So it's all progression. But he still needs gear from normal. Well, we're not doing it. You know what I mean? So it's on him. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of that. I really am. I'm not. So we'll see.
I mean, like, one of the things that I just thought about, again, like, one of the things they keep adding to fights to make them original for heroic modes is, like, an entirely different phase. So back to the idea of, like, the scaling, what they could just do is basically make, like we say, to better scale it, have something set all the way through, but, like, for Mythic, it has something completely different that will, maybe change the way the fight is. Maybe not what your group composition is, but like there's an entire different phase where the boss turns into a monster with giant legs, Ragnaros, for example. Stuff like that. I think that would definitely, spice it up without making it too retarded.
I honestly have a feeling we're going to see. Obviously, the beta's on its window, but we're going to see. I have a feeling they're literally going to be different fights, because we've all talked about this now. We've said this, Fizzy agrees, 10, 25, it doesn't matter. Everybody agrees on this. The fight, when you're doing it in a flexible raid difficulty, you don't learn the mechanics. You literally don't learn the mechanics, because now we only have 15, so this in 20 minutes is going to be completely different. So even if the fight looks and operates similarly, the strategy is going to be completely different. So like Mioni said, more phases, do whatever you want. It's not going to matter. It's going to be a completely different fight. So any other topics on this? Because the next thing we're talking about is pretty different. So
I threw a bit off topic in the beginning. Like originally we were talking about how how it's going to be for the sort of casual community, and I threw it into like the high end sort of category again. But in terms of like the casual community, I feel it's good. It's going to be great to be able to just maybe down the line, but be able to do normal and heroic raids with the stream and things like that. With the community and get them involved. But it just depends on the difficulty, as I said. Like, I don't want to be trying to do normal with people who can't do it without voice comms and without taking it really seriously. I just want to be able to go in there and just be like, okay, we wiped, but we just need to stand on the button. All right, we know what we're doing now. We can kill it. Instead of it being like, if it was heroic, like the current heroic, and you're like, all right, we need to, you heal this and you use this cooldown at exactly 1 minute 50, and you dispel. Like, it's crazy. You need voice comms and you need to be able to tell people. You need to direct people. So I do hope that they think about that and they make it so that normal and heroic are achievable by people who aren't using comms. Yeah, and that's why I kind of worry about the gap, because normal and heroic needs to be easier. It really does. Now that they're opening it up to be able to be done with anyone, it needs to be easier. But then is it just going to go from like this heroic difficulty that's like, it's a bit hard, but you need a team that's a bit more competent, but you can do it without comms, to heroic, which to mythic, which is just going to be like, oh my god, what have we stepped into? Why is this so much more difficult? People won't be ready for it. So I don't know. I feel there's just going to be a huge ramp up in between the two.
Yeah. See, I completely agree with that because when I heard about the flex concept, my original thought that came through my mind, I love playing the video game. One of my favorite things about the video game is going into content and helping people who are struggling with the content get through it. And it sounds shallow, but my character can carry a flex raid easily without any question. So I imagined originally going in there and like maybe getting on vent with a small guild that's struggling to do flex and be like, listen, I could help you guys out. But nobody even cares. Like it's just, yeah, just don't bother with vent, don't bother with any voice comm, and just do the fight. And if people quit, then we'll find new people. So that does not translate. You don't learn how to raid when you're sitting there listening to music, beating off while you're doing a fight. It doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? Heroic, now mythic raiding has to be done with people calling things out, people saying exactly where to go. Everybody needs to know exactly what they're going to do. So with all that, I worry. I really do, because it's gonna foster people pugging, and it's going to foster people just not caring about mechanics. It's been bad in the past, and it's probably only going to get worse.
To continue that as well, did you see the tweets about them looking to 30 and even possibly 40-man normal
that was
and heroic? Like, that is crazy. I really, really don't want them to go down that direction. I mean, they're going to be tuning this fight around 20-man, and then you're going to be able to have double the amount of people you normally allowed. Like, what? So there's going to be, instead of like 3 debuffs, there's going to be like 20 debuffs, and there's, oh man, I don't know. I feel that really limits them to what they can actually do in the fights.
Debuffs go out at once.
Yeah.
And I agree. Yeah, because once again, we've been talking about this now for the last 15 minutes. You don't learn. you do not learn. You literally do not learn when there's 40 men in a raid, 36 men and 4 women. It doesn't matter. You do not learn. Do not learn.
That's why I'm hoping that this throwaway mentality of like, oh, well, they don't need this, we'll just make it easier, for this sort of casualized thing doesn't impact the people at the top in any major way. Because obviously, if they're going to make 25-man heroic stuff easy to do, then the heroic people who are going into 20-man, even though that is their focus, do they then just see that as a horrible, boring, easy grind to get gear, or should that be something more to them? And honestly, I think they just need to get rid of that throwaway mentality, go back to the mentality of, it's 25-man heroic raiding, we're going to give you some sort of extra little things, a little bit more leniency, but no way should they nerf it to the point where they can just go through it like they can in Flex or LFR. I do not want that, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot say it enough. It's just completely counterproductive when you're talking about a small difficulty raid that you're even a 40-man would be even more counterproductive, like Siler just brought out. That's just a shit fest. Like, who even thinks about that? Yeah, let's see if we can get... Yeah, go ahead, Fizzy. What's up?
I totally agree with what Siler said about how 30 and 40 sound crazy. Because I mean, I feel like if they go to 30 and 40, it's just gonna be like raid bosses, not raid bosses, obviously raid bosses, but like world bosses. What I meant to say, you're just gonna get 39 other people and say, all right, beat the hell out of this guy until he gives us loot, like kind of how like Undasa is. Like, just don't face him towards the raid and you get free shit essentially. I mean, or even Celestials. I mean, they don't have any sort of mechanics that are like that you have to follow, because I mean obviously Celestials has like some mechanics, but the graveyard's 10 feet away from the res point, so it's not going to make a huge deal. I just feel like if they go to 30 and 40 man sort of raids, that the fights are either going to be so dumbed down or just so easy that it's not even going to be like a challenge, and honestly it seems kind of like a waste of resources and slightly pointless.
Yeah, 40 is too much, man. I don't know if any of you guys actually raided in Classic, but it doesn't work. It does not translate to how the game. The only thing, like, I close my eyes, and when I hear this discussion, I immediately see my 40 raid frames with 36 people with a debuff. You know what I mean? It's just like, what? No. You don't do 40, man, nowadays. You just don't. Royal bosses, like Fizzy said, they're a complete Zerg fest. Nobody cares. Literally, you're standing every mechanic in the world. You got 12 healers, 9 tanks. Like who? It's just you don't learn anything in that way. So I'm not.
There's also the technical limitations of having that many people on the screen that the casual people they're aiming it for probably won't even be able to load.
That's a great point. Yeah, a lot of people do not have the processors.
25 man's pretty bad.
Oh yeah.
I'm just waiting for the forum post for heroic raid finder.
yeah, cross-realm mythic. Christ, don't even bring that up.
It won't take long.
That would kill guilds, unfortunately.
Yeah, that would.
Hopefully it doesn't.
But
any other topics that we want to bring up on this, like mechanic type?
I did have one a second ago. Hold on.
Okay. Yep, it's fine.
No, it's gone. I'll let you know if it comes back.
All right. Well, we have 2 more big points that we want to talk about, so we're gonna move on. If you bring that back,
there we go.
Oh, there you go. It's back.
In terms of like the way Flex works right now, like if you have 5 druids, you can use all 5 battle reses, or like 2 druids, 2 warlocks, whatever. If they were to do 30 or 40 man, would that work the same? So
That's
in heroic difficulty, you've got like 30 battle reses.
That's a great point.
Like what the fuck?
Yeah, imagine 40 man. Imagine 40 man.
I feel like if that happened, they would just bring in classes with battle reses for that sole purpose. Like, don't die to anything and battle res someone if he goes down. Like, I mean, I would hate for that to happen because that's kind of like you don't really need them there, or you don't want them there. Rather, you just want them for their battle res, and that would be kind of that would suck if you were that person, obviously.
Yep. I completely agree because if I can't remember the names of these bosses in MC at all, but the dog boss that feared everyone when. In that fight, you would literally keep people out of combat with the boss. You'd have them stand all the way at the other side of the room. So if people died, they would res them. They would go up and res them. And when they res them, they would be in combat. And that was before, obviously, pulsing combat ticks. But like that, it's the same concept now. If there's no limit, why am I not going to just bring 40 battle reses? You know what I mean? Like, could you imagine that, dude? That is the epitome of Zergfest. Yep, just anybody dies, res him. That guy's dead, res him again. 40. Elto, how do you die 30 times on one fight, but res him again? It's just nuts. And this whole topic is predicated on this. Classic and BC, people look back at these things and be like, they were flawless, but they are not in any way flawless, you know what I mean? So they're trying to incorporate systems that obviously we're just speculating, you know what I mean? We're just speculating. It might not work that way. I'm sure they're not going to allow 40 battle reses in a flex group, but it's still something to talk about, you know? So any other topics that we want to talk about with mechanics or scaling, stuff like that?
I think we're good there. No,
that's everything.
Right.
Okay, so now we're going to move on. This is a big topic as well. Talking about loot. Now, we've already heard that, they're going to be basically completely changing loot. They're changing it so there's going to be less stats on the loot, but the gems are going to be more important. They're changing it so you have tertiary stats like run speed or, cleave and stuff like that, life steal, all this cool stuff. And they're also changing it so when you switch specs, your gear changes as well. Like, so if I'm ret I don't know why I'd be ret, but if I wanted to be ret, I could now be ret in my holy spec. The gear that I'm currently wearing, and it would translate to not optimal, but suitable. So with that in mind, we now have to discuss how loot is going to affect rating, because when you have people switching and all the gear and stuff like that, what do you guys think? Let's start with Fizzy, because obviously 10-man, I feel like the biggest limiting reagent in 10-man is the fact that it only drops 2 pieces of gear. So with that kind of loot system in a raid, obviously it's going to get translated to 20. But if it was in today, how do you feel? Like, how do you feel about that?
I feel like the whole /roll system would have to go completely out the window, and everybody would have to start using DKP or some sort of reward-based, auction, whatever the hell you want to think of. Because if you have people just doing /roll and only 2 pieces of gear drop, and that gear is good for whatever spec, I mean. Granted, that would probably take less weeks for every person to get, tier gloves or whatever, but if you have one dude who is rolling, like 5s or 6s every week, obviously he's going to get really frustrated and might even consider switching guilds or to stop raiding altogether. So that being said, I feel like with this new loot change, it's going to be maybe not essential for casual guilds or just guilds that do, the normal and heroic, but for mythic guilds, I feel like they're all going to need to implement some sort of, dragon kill points or just some sort of system where people who, have been working their ass off for that loot get that gear, because You know, personally, I've been in situations where I pass the people who like need it more than I do, or like I just, you know, if someone else gets it and I've been wanting it for weeks, I kind of just I don't like to make big deals about it because, you know, in the end it is a game, but it's nice to get rewards for things that you do and like, you know, when you contribute and all of that stuff.
It's a good point because if I think about it like linearly, the way we process loot, obviously we use a loot council system, so it's more like we kind of weigh whether or not this person gets the best out of it. The way gear has gone, it's completely almost invalidated our system. Everybody has the same gear now, literally. We're waiting for Warforge, heroic Warforge pieces to drop. So it's like, well, these three people just fucking flat out roll for it. Like, what? It's great for everyone. So if they do this even further, now it's going to not only complicate that system, but think about when things like run speed get included. You know what I mean? Well, now that's his best in slot because he wants the run speed, but the other guy wants the cleave. You know what I mean? So I don't know. What do you think about this, Si?
Well, I'm kind of torn. I'm probably going to be bringing up another topic that's a bit different to this one, but you know, that's how my brain works. So in terms of loot, I'm really excited to the fact that I can like reroll. I can go feral next expansion, and then just randomly be like Boomkin, and you know, go to my Boomkin form, and I can run around as a Boomkin with full Boomkin gear. But the just trying to say that they're trying to make loot more fun next expansion, which they are. You know, it's definitely going to be fun. The fact that you can get gear that's good for all your specs, and you know, it's going to have these crazy. You know, it might have a gem socket one week, or it might have this, you know, the extra stat on, and that's cool. But then they've also done things that are counterproductive to that. Like they removed Reforging, which I felt was a really strange choice because they took out expertise and hit rating, which was one of the big things that, you know, you needed Reforging for, but also that made gear suck because I got a new piece of gear and it's like I need to go Reforge so I can get my hit and expertise right. But now that's gone, I feel they could keep Reforging in because if I get a piece that drops that's mastery, crit, and agility, yeah, it's not perfect, but if I could reforge it, it'd be even better. So I'd still take it, equip it for now, and then I'd reforge it later on and make it, you know, a bit better for me. Or I can try out like a crazy sort of haste build where, you know, I just reforge everything to haste, you know. So I feel that's a bit counterproductive. And also, one thing that keeps a lot of players going, and it used to when I was playing my paladin back in Kata, was the fact that I could gear my off specs. So, you know, I'd gear it, and then the guild would be like, well, we want you to do a bit of tanking on the side, and I'd start, you know, building up a prot set. But now I'm going to have that set already because of my ret set. And, well, I would have that now anyway because of the haste thing for prot, but you know what I mean? You don't need to put as much time into your gear. But then they've kind of answered that again, but differently, that your one set can be sort of upgraded by getting these gem sockets and extra stats and things like that. So it's weird that I feel they could have
still there. But
yeah,
it's not, yeah.
Like they could
I
have
know what you mean.
changed things a little bit to, you know, so it really is exciting. So I get a piece of gear drops because right now in Siege, so many pieces drop and it's like crit and expertise. I really don't want those stats, please. I want gear, but I don't want those stats, and it's not very fun. But I feel they could have. They've made some choices for WoD that are a bit strange, and I don't know if I agree with them, especially the Reforging one. I really don't understand the reasoning behind Reforging being like cut. But yeah.
Okay, so let's shift that over to Samkos then, because obviously, you know, he's never done like crazy high-end rating, but reforging is something that every player can benefit from at max level. How do you feel about the loot, the gear changes, stuff like that?
Well, if I get one piece of new gear and I want to max out everything, or how do you say it? Min-max things. I have to reforge everything again. And it costs money. Well, it costs gold anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Gold is actually, I haven't noticed this, but reforging a full set of gear is quite expensive, isn't it?
It's hella expensive.
Right, yeah. So
I
you're in
don't
favor
have any
of that.
solid income in WoW.
Of course, yeah. So you're in favor of that. They remove it wholly, and you see
Yeah.
no reason that. Okay. All right, yeah. And personally, go ahead.
Sorry, but on that as well, now that expertise and hit's gone, you shouldn't really need to do that much, like, because that's the biggest factor of reforging right now. You get a new piece of gear that messes with your hit and expertise, so you have to change everything to tweak it to these, and you're like, specific values. Now they're gone, I don't feel you need to, and with casual players not playing as much, one piece of gear dropping or the gear is a lot more crucial to them, like where I've got the choice of raiding each week and I'll see lots of pieces dropping. A casual player doesn't really have that option. They might kill 1 or 2 bosses a week, or they might kill more, but one piece of gear to them is huge, and them not being able to make it as good for themselves as possible, I feel takes it away from them as well and makes it a lot less exciting.
Yeah, you know what? Immediately when we watched this together, didn't we? We were all in Vent together, and when they said no more hit and expertise, everybody's like, yes, yes. And then they said no more reforging. I'm like, why not? You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to reforge now as much as you used to. So there's no reason to take it out, in my opinion. But they're still doing it. So I don't know, Mione, what do you thought?
On the loot thing, back at the start of this discussion, way back, from a resto druid sort of perspective, as one of the healers, like, I see this as a huge opportunity, at least for empathy, where maybe our setup is going to be a little bit more lax, where we don't have the same people every week. It's going to happen. It always happens in these sort of guilds, and we're kind of, as Siler put it, every day that we don't disband is another step forward. So that's the sort of mentality we're going into board with. So for me personally, having, like, currently I have multiple sets of gear in my bag, and my bags are full, not only with, like, toys and shit, but also with gear that's crap anyway, but if I ever wanted to do any damage to something in a daily, then I'd have to switch to that anyway. But now, this solves that problem, and it also solves the problem that if our tank DCs or decides to go and, like, go off with his friend for, like, 2 hours mysteriously, I can just go, I'll tank, and then, we can have Siler go healer, and we're sorted. Or for fights where we have, say for instance, we need 3 tanks. There's been instances where we've had to have that, like when we were doing, G-Kun, we'd have to have someone basically go and deal with, one of the platforms, etc., or whatever, one of these mechanics. So that allows basically me, to be able to do pretty much anything I want, and pretty much any of you guys now as well. But it's all about making it easier for the player to just play the game, as opposed to having to do several things before raid. Now, when Burning Crusade came out, they added gem sockets to gear. This was a huge thing and allowed for customization, and this is where it's gone since then. But I do like the idea of just having limited amounts of control over your gear, because then, like with reforging, I'll take the opposite argument to this. I don't actually think reforging is something I want to see in the game anymore, simply because you end up going to cookie cutter sort of specs anyway. At least for a healer, there's like a haste build or a mastery build, and that's pretty much it for a resto druid right now. So, they're 2 sets, and one's better than the other in pretty much 9 times out of 10. You don't want to have to go outside to reforge the shit, so you just stick in that set anyway. It's not a bad thing to remove that. If they make it so that gear is the same regardless, then you're going to have a best in slot list, and that BIS list isn't going to change. Just, you're not going to need to go and, like, reforge something. You can actually stay there, you can have more attempts on the boss, and focus your time on actually getting the gear you need, as opposed to, like, trying to metagame something.
Right, and I'll say this, if you let me interject quickly, because in Burning Crusade, all right, the gear progression was very, very, very distinct. And I recall specifically that there's like a few, like let's put it this way. There was a green bracer for warrior tanks that was better than every blue out there because it had hit on it. And you needed hit as a warrior tank, but no blues ever had hit. So stuff like that. It doesn't sound fun, but it's fun for me because I'm going to know that, like, this gear I have now, yeah, it wasn't designed obviously intentionally, but like it's interesting because now it's like, well, this piece is different from that piece. Whereas now, like literally, I just take the highest eye level. If heroic Warforged drops, it's equipped because the stam is huge and the amount of intellect and spirit you gain from the piece, like I don't even care. I'll reforge to mastery, whatever the other stat is. Just give me the fucking piece. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
I mean, the one other thing as well, I guess we should talk about now is like competition, because this does make it, homogenized, and we do get like, oh look, a shiny new piece of gear dropped. well, I'm a druid, and there's a druid tank, and there's a boomkin, and there's 3 druid healers. Shit. It's best for everybody now. How the hell are we going to decide who gets this?
Right, yeah, that's a huge concern as well, because like we talked about a few minutes ago, loot systems really need to adapt to this. And like Fizzy said, coming off a 10-man system where they pretty much just seem to roll for everything, like now it's just that's not an option, because if that's the case, like you really have to decide who's getting these pieces of gear, because it should be anyway equal upgrades for literally everyone who could equip it. Maybe that's going to mean all 20 people. Who knows? Now, with that being said, I'd like to talk about how many pieces of gear do you guys think are actually going to drop in 20-man? Because in 10-man it's 2 pieces, right? I'm not sure exactly how, maybe 3 in some situations. And then in 25 it's currently 6. So what do you guys think?
Isn't it currently like I was trying to work it out today. It used to be X amount of people is one. Oh, it was five. What was it? 1 piece per 5 people, and they added an extra 1 to 25-man to make it a bit more fair. So maybe 4 to 5 pieces from 20-man.
Right, yeah, 4 to 5 seems pretty realistic. Anyone disagree with that? Have any opinions?
I mean, any less than that, and you'd be having a riot on your hands, wouldn't you? So
Yeah.
I feel like 5's a good number. That way, like if they are just all straight flatline upgrades for everybody, and it's if 5, 20 people's 5 groups of 5 or 5 groups of 4. Sorry. That way you can like distribute loot maybe a little more evenly, and it's not so much of like a just a crapshoot basically for loot. So that way it's like, okay, so and so got gloves from this boss, so your druid gloves, and let's say the other druid gets pants from this boss just because it's just a flatline upgrade.
But with them making it for all specs, well, maybe they'll reduce it. Maybe they'll want people to be gearing for longer now.
Now let me say this. All right, this is prophetic. What's the date today? The 16th. Mark it down on your calendars. I'm calling this right now. It's going to change per boss. Some bosses are going to drop 2 pieces, and the last ones are going to drop 6. This was a concept they explored in BC, and it came over from vanilla. If you guys remember, the first 4 bosses in MC, they dropped 2 pieces of loot for 40 players. Yep, and that's exactly what it is, because it was intentional. They did not want players to outgear the content. Like obviously, it's all part of the same tier. Look at Thok. You know what I mean? We got a rate of fucking 570 plus eye level. That shit was meant for people of 550. You know what I mean? So we're hitting that in Rage Timer like it owes us something. It's not even a factor. We're 8 healing. You know what I mean? It's just like, what? They do not want that. At least in the past, they did not. Now they don't seem to care. So I'm calling it right now. They haven't discussed this yet. I guarantee you that there's going to be, maybe it won't, because there's going to be 2 raids, maybe 1 raid drops less or something like that. But I guarantee you Mythic is not going to have the exact same amount of gear from all pieces. So mark that shit down on your calendars.
I feel like that kind of depends, like the whole, kind of preventing players from outgearing the content. I think that kind of depends on the speed at which they're releasing content. Because I know, like, a while back, it might have been a few months ago, probably before BlizzCon, they said that they wanted to be able to put content out faster. I don't remember. I don't have a source for this. I just remember reading on the MMO Champ forever ago. They wanted to be able to put content faster so that way players had more things to do and weren't, it wasn't like Dragon Soul where you just had to grind your face against that shit forever.
Right, yeah, no, I mean, you're right. They're trying to dump content out. There's no question about that. But one way or the other, it's still raiding, and I feel like they're trying to revert to so many systems that worked for them 4 years ago, 5 years ago, that they kind of just tossed out. Like, I don't think there was ever a conscious. I doubt they ever sat down and were like, "Hey, let's make the same loot drop now for every piece." You know what I mean? They probably just started doing it. But now that they're going to go to 1 solid level again of raiding, 20-man is the only option for the high end. I can't see it any other way, honestly. I feel like the first 4 bosses are just going to be those like, oh my god, why do we even do this boss? It dropped 1 piece. It's a fucking belt that nobody wants.
I have something to back that up as well, that idea. Because if you remember the layout of one of they did some artwork for showing some of one of the raids or a dungeon or something. They're approaching this like, everybody loves Ulduar, let's do wings again. So that would make sense. It wouldn't be so much skill gated, but having different loot for different bosses, you've got the fact that you need to kill that boss to get to the next, like, 4 bosses, because you need to kill those in this particular wing, but you can approach them in any order, and that way they're addressing both skill gating for the actual harder content, and they're also addressing people complaining that they can't get past boss 1. So I think that's definitely...
So probably... I guess this was like this in ICC, wasn't it? The last boss of every wing dropped 1 extra piece, so... Yeah, I mean, that's pretty relevant.
I think it's a pretty good way to handle it, personally. Like, just having the wings, because that way it kind of adds a little bit of, like, it depends. It varies on guild's needs, too. So, like, if your guild isn't as geared enough for, let's just throw out the Blood Wing in ICC. You could go do the wing with, the Plague... I don't even remember anymore. That was forever ago. But, like, the Plague Wing, Like, you didn't have to go to, like, a set wing.
Yeah, you could do whichever one you want.
It was like this in Nax too, wasn't it? Like you could just start off on. You didn't have to start on the War Quarter. You could start on the Construct Quarter.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. And that I think that they'll have to do that with loot then. They've also mentioned that there's going to be a key, which is a whole other topic we're not going to talk about today. But no, like a key. Like say there's 12 bosses. After the 8th boss, there's going to be a back door, like there was in Kara. Yeah. So you'll be able to skip the first half. Yeah, they said that at BlizzCon.
Going back to loot, I don't really know if we covered this, but in terms of like the more casual guilds as well, like normal, maybe they'll do heroic now, but that's gonna have random loot. You kill it, you'll have a chance of getting loot. And then if that guild ever decides to even step into heroic, they then have to kind of devise a loot system, I guess.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point.
It's kind of weird, like.
Yeah.
So the guilds that are just looking to kind of not do things too seriously, but even a casual guild can make the first couple of bosses a heroic near the end of a tier. So they're gonna go from like just everyone gets their own loot. No, you don't need to really worry about distributing loot. To then all of a sudden you've got this. Well, we killed a boss. We've got these loot pieces. What do we do? Like it's.
That's a very good point, actually, because think about this. Obviously, new players play the game every day, and new players raid every day. Like, we got people in our guild who literally have never even... They weren't even born. Fast Feet wasn't even born when Classic was out. You know what I mean? Let's put it that way. So, the change is not something that people recognize. So now, a new guild props up. Think about this. Samkos, he wants to start a fucking 25-man heroic, or a 20-man mythic guild, right? He has literally never raided before. Nobody in his guild has ever raided before. So you just go into it, and you're like, yeah, let's kill some bosses. And loot drops, and that's, people get it randomly. That's all you know. That's literally all you've ever seen happen in this video game, because you've never done content that does otherwise. And then you get to Mythic, and you don't have a loot console. You know what I mean? Like, you have nothing. So that's a very interesting point. What do you guys think? Miani, do you have any thoughts on that?
I just had an epiphany. I've just had an idea of it. What would be the biggest bombshell for them to drop for this? Personal loot. Like they did in Flex and pretty much everything else.
They're not doing that.
Oh, they're not doing that, for sure.
They're not for Mythic, no.
I was gonna say that would be like the most like painful solution to that, and they keep going with this personal loot thing. And personally, I kind of like it in Pugs, but it should stay there.
Yeah, it's great for Pugs, LFR, or Flex,
I think it's great for those, the more casual players and whatever. And obviously, it's not gonna. I really hope they don't put it in Mythic, because it's gonna be really annoying to see some person getting, gear off of this boss for 3 weeks straight and getting like copies of shit they already have, and I still haven't gotten, my boots that I've been waiting for since we started raiding this stupid thing, right?
Yeah, let's just pray that if they ever consider that completely ruins it.
Yeah.
Yes.
What if they did something like this for like the normal and heroic then? Each boss gives out a set amount of loot. So for example, if you have 15 people, 3 people are guaranteed to get something. Or you can switch it to drop loot. So you have the two options. That
would be an interesting system, probably technology restricted.
Yeah, probably, but then
cool.
You'd have the choice then. I mean...
Maybe, yeah, you can learn it the other way, Because the thing about that system is, like we just alluded to here, if we're doing progression, like literally every boss, every pull matters, then if fucking Siler's getting 4 pieces, like Fizzy said, and he only doesn't even need half of it, meanwhile the rest of the Shaman DPS are getting nothing, like it's just completely wasted. That's not how progression's meant to work. It's meant to be you're making intelligent choices with the rewards you've gotten from previous bosses to help you kill subsequent bosses. So...
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's
Yeah.
it's gonna be strange to see how it works because that's a lot of progression to do based on random loot. Like you get people who are really unlucky. You know, they say they have the anti-luck system in, but it's still you could get one piece and then you don't see another piece for like another 2 weeks, and that person is going to be really, really behind. And then you got the top DPS, top just because he's Mr. Luck Bags getting friggin' Looker Dog there, getting a piece every single boss and getting exactly what he needs. And you know that's going to be kind of weird to go from heroic into mythic, and your mythic progression is going to be based on luck. So that's going to be.
I mean,
it is gonna suck.
back that point up with the fact that Harry did no raiding, came online, and then basically equaled our item level through basically doing all of the LFRs and shit within one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I agree. The whole like obviously we're gonna have to progress through normal. Like that's not debatable. You have to do it. And you're right. I hadn't even thought about this. I can't believe I didn't give this any thought. That sucks. That's terrible. So yeah, we're just gonna be killing bosses, and then loot's just, oh yeah, look at that. Yep, Sub's just got that piece of gear that everybody else in the raid needs. That's great. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't like that
Yeah,
actually.
definitely.
Yeah.
If you have your weaker players, no offense, but if you have like the weaker players fully geared and the stronger players undergeared, it's going to be a really unbalanced raid.
Completely
Definitely.
Yeah.
Trinkets. Fuck trinkets.
And weapons,
Oh my
like
God.
weapons are so huge. If I don't get a single weapon throughout heroic and I go into mythic, I'm just going to be like slapping the boss. I'm going to do absolutely
You're
nothing.
literally
to mess
gonna,
up.
and that's what we talked about earlier. Like you're gonna have to do normal every week, no matter what. You know what I mean? It sucks, but it sounds like it's gonna be mandatory. So that's everything. That is the whole list, boys. So anything else that we want to bring up?
Yeah. One thing I wanted to say was, how do we feel guilds are going to do? So which guild setup is going to be better in mythic? Is it going to be the 10-man or the 25-man? Because like you've got your 25-man guilds who are only going to have to drop a couple of people, but then you've got the 10-man guilds who are more core, and you know I don't know what guild
We're
will.
talking about like max, like high end.
Yeah, so when we move into mythic, which
Right.
you know, the 10-man guilds moving into mythic and the 25-man guilds moving into mythic, which comps are we gonna see like at the top? Is it still gonna be an equal balance? And you know, like a few 10-mans, few 25s? Or are we gonna see like the big 25-man guilds up there, or the big 10-man guilds?
Right.
You know,
Well,
like,
I think in terms of like the literally top tier, like we raid every single day of the week. I have a feeling there's the 25-man guilds are going to dominate still, like the big ones now. But I'm promising you this: there's going to be 10-man guilds that say, "Listen, it's time to make this happen," and they're going to merge with like two of the best 10-man guilds ever are going to merge or something like that, and they're now going to
Yeah.
be one of the best guilds. You know what I mean? What do
Yeah,
you
I
think?
feel like
Ruffus?
I feel like there's going to be, Blood Legion is obviously still going to be one of the top guilds, because they're 25 and they have 25. They probably have more than 25, obviously, because I'm sure they rotate people in. They have, they're stacked with amazing players. I'm sure they're still going to do great, obviously, in Mythic. But like you said, I'm sure there's going to be those 10-man guilds that kind of come together and just create this ultimate team of players. And I feel like it might be a balance of 10 and 25 guilds, or previous 10 and 25 guilds that are kind of like mixed in the whole 20-man spectrum. But I feel like 25-mans are already going to have the advantage just because they're dropping fewer people instead of having to get a whole 10 more people.
Right, and then I'll put this on the table as well. Not meant to offend anyone here, but a lot of the 10-mans, like the 10-mans on our server, we've raided with them. They have no structure. They literally don't even have a guild leader. They don't even have anybody talking in vent. It's just everybody just says whatever they want whenever they want. And that's not going to work in 20-man. So the 10-man guilds that are of that mindset where they don't have a set structure. They don't have like a loot system. They don't have like 3 to 4 people who develop strategies. When they get to 20, they're going to struggle. So for that reason alone, that is the pure difference between 10 and 25. No matter what it says mechanically, 25-man is more difficult because you need that level of leadership and you need everybody else to be listening and paying attention. It just doesn't happen. You see this weekly. Every week I struggle to keep this, but that is the true benefit of going from 25 to 20. And I feel bad for the 10-man guilds that don't have because in 40-man you need like class leader and loot leader and all this shit. But now you literally just put a 10-man together, and as long as everybody respects each other, there's no reason to even have a real raid leader, So that's probably going to hurt a lot of guilds, unfortunately.
Absolutely. I feel like having a structure, like even if you're not a super hardcore heroic casual, or wow, that was a jumble of words. Even if you're not a hardcore 10-man guild, I mean, any guild really needs structure, or you're just gonna have, random people just spamming trade or guild chat. But I mean, like in the rating sense, having a sort of structure, like even a basic loot council, you don't need to have some complex add-on distribution thing. Like just having a loot council is it's good for people who actually want to make progression and advance to the next boss, because I mean if you're just doing slash roll, it's not a really strong loot system. Like we don't do that in my guild. We have a loot council, and it's kind of like, all right, what piece do you have now, and then we'll compare it and then decide who they think would benefit from it more. And I think that's a pretty fair way to do things, as long as everybody is cool about it and doesn't upset when they don't get something because it's better for this person or vice versa.
Right, yeah, it's once again about a degree of respect. When you only have 10 people, nobody really doubts each other. They all believe that it's for the greater good. But, I see this weekly. Every 25-man progression boss we kill, somebody's whispering to me like, "Oh, well, you shouldn't do it this way." It's like, listen, just let me handle this part, all right? But you just shoot them frost bolts at the fucking the dinosaur, all right? We'll see how it goes. But that's everything. So, what do you guys think? Meoni, Samkos, any closing words?
As regards to like predictions, Silo, as which is going to have the easier time, I think both. I think anybody who has like any sort of thing about them that they want to be the best, because honestly, with this equal footing for 20 men, I think this is such a positive sort of decision on Blizzard's side. It obviously has its implications that we've looked at here in this episode, but at the end of the day, if you want to be the world's best, the first kill of something, you talk with your feet, you get up, and you make, the sacrifices that are necessary. And you got to think, Paragon and people like this, they already have communities set up for this, so it's not going to be difficult for the people at the top. And I definitely think we're going to be seeing some brand new faces right at the top of that list. So, equal footing, in my opinion.
It's just like when the United States of America was created, you know what I mean? Like all them shit countries in Europe, they were free to come over here, and everybody was on equal ground again, and all you had to do was have a brain, and you could succeed over here. So
I think it'd be interesting to see like completely new guilds come from out of nowhere that are all of a sudden like top 5, just random ass guilds from just completely random servers. Just hey, we killed 7 out of 7 mythic second, and we did it before Blood Legion. I mean, that'd be pretty cool to see like completely new guilds, because we're so used to seeing the Midwinters, Paragons, all those people at the top end. I mean, I think it'd be cool for some new faces come about the heroic or mythic rating scene.
Yeah, it would be cool, and I think it'll definitely give guilds a lot of chances, because guilds are going to disband. It's unfortunate, but a lot of guilds are going to die out, and a lot of new guilds will be born, and it's
yeah, unfortunately. I'm 100% sure that those 10-man guilds on our server, they're just going to fold. Like, literally, they're just going to fold. They probably won't even raid at all next expansion, because those guilds, like, they literally have no structure. They have nothing. They don't even raid. Like, they just raid whenever all 10 people are on, half them guilds. It's like, yeah, well, if you guys are around Thursday, do you want to get together? It's like, well, yeah, no shit, you kill bosses. You raid like six nights a week sometimes, you know what I mean? So, that's not going to work in 20-man, no doubt, so...
And that's kind of unfortunate for those players who, do want to see that 20-man content, because if they're in one of those guilds and they're trying to, like, let's say that guild eventually just says, what, we're not going to do anything. The jump for them is going to be even more difficult to get into those higher end guilds because they want to do mythic, but, they may not have the gear to just jump right into it. And if that guild isn't doing like the heroics, it's going to be kind of hard for them to kind of bridge the gap so they can actually be a part of, that final echelon community.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. But that appears to be everything.
Yeah,
Anybody else?
That's pretty much all we can talk
That's
about.
pretty much a wrap then, isn't it? So we would like to thank everybody that's on here. So Silo, Metro, Sam, and obviously our guest, who's been absolutely wonderful as our first guest, Fizzy. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hope to see you again in the future sometime. It'd be good to catch up actually after this stuff comes out, when you're not too busy in the future, and just see what happened and what befell all of these points.
Oh yeah, for sure. That'd be pretty cool to see, kind of like in the future after Warlords comes out, just to see how everything actually did happen. It'd be cool to talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so much, and we are obviously all, no matter what group we're a part of, like in terms of raiding, we're all raiders here, or going to be raiding, and we're all looking forward to the content because Blizzard never puts out a bad game, and that's pretty much the mantra, really. So, Silo, you want to like ask around for plugging and stuff like that?
Yeah, sure. So, Fizzy, do you want to like say who you are and what you do, where you're at?
I play a Holy Paladin on the Underdog US. I am, obviously it's a dead server, but I'm the top geared Paladin on my server, which is kind of cool, I guess, even if there is like hardly any people. I've been healing forever, and it's always been my favorite thing. I think it's the most challenging aspect of WoW, and some people might disagree with that, but from a personal standpoint, it's always been super enjoyable, and it's been getting better and better as the expansions come out.
Cool. And where can people find you at? Have you got Twitch, YouTube, or anything like that?
Yep, I have a Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter. You can find me at twitter.com/Fizzy297, twitch.tv/Fizzy297, and you could also find me on YouTube at youtube.com/Fizzy297rocks. I have a bunch of different stuff on there, from WoW guides to PvP videos to Let's Plays. It kind of varies.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely check that out if you're listening. And in terms of me, Silo up. Check out wow.stratix.com. Hopefully you're watching this on there. If you're not, go check it out. Great website with loads of content, especially for WoD. We are going to be going mental in WoD with all the different content. In terms of my personal things, if you ever want to ask me a question or anything like that, hit me up at twitter.com/Cygamer and my youtube.com/Cygamer and Miona.
So yeah, if you on the off chance want to come and see some videos that I occasionally make on our Ace Games TV, which I'm a part of, which Silo owns, you can go over to youtube.com/Ace Games, and you can find lore videos currently. I'm trying to get through that sort of stuff. I also write for wow.stratix.com. I'm one of the writers there under Silo. And I'm currently writing about lore and pretty much anything that makes me rant about the WoW community. If you've read the last post, then you'll know what I mean. But yeah, that's pretty much me. And if you want to, you can follow me on Twitter. MeOnlyAce is my name on there. So thank you.
Awesome. Yep, definitely do that. Check out the videos on Ace. And if you've got any questions for Meoni, especially about lore, he's definitely the person to ask. So hit him up on Twitter. Samkas?
Yeah, add me on Twitter on Samkos44. I might update it once a year, maybe.
There you go.
What a legend.
And if you have any questions, please don't. I know nothing.
There you go. If you want an inconsistent Twitter, follow Samkas. And Metro had to go already, but Metro, obviously Paladin GM of WoM. If you're looking for a guild on US, 25-man Mythic, 20-man coming in WoD even, check out one on Firetree. And you'll also probably say, check out the videos on Ace Games TV, youtube.com/Ace Games TV. And if you're interested if you're on EU and looking for a guild, Stratix WoW has its own basically dedicated guild now. We're going to be doing some raiding, hopefully before the expansion ends, but definitely in WoD. And if you're just looking for a casual guild to do some like flex, some old school runs, PvP, whatever, then definitely check out Stratix Empathy on Terran Mill EU or on Horde. Anyone's welcome from level 1 to level 90. Just come along, join the guild. It's level 25, and have some fun with me, Meoni. I don't know if Samcast has got an alt in there, but you probably will at some point. Oh, you already got an alt in there. Nice. And
it's almost level 4.
Nice. And many of us, so definitely a fun place to be. So thanks all for watching or listening to the podcast, or watching. I guess it's going to be in video form. And look out for the next podcast coming next week. Thanks for watching.
See ya.
The WoW Stratix Podcast, a bi-weekly podcast featuring interviews, news, reviews, and more from the World of Warcraft community. Be sure to check out wowstratix.com.